And this is Bob. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Foundations of Agile Beyond the Role, Beyond the PM Role. And this basically this idea came up when we were having a lean coffee about like how does a PM fit in with when we have these Agile teams. So what Nitin and I did is we pulled together this presentation, and we hope that you enjoy
They're just
it.
starting. They'll tell me later. Can it wait?
And if you could put yourself on mute unless you're asking a question, that would be great. And for those that joined a little bit earlier, we were doing a Mentimeter survey. And so let me show you what everybody came up with. And so this is a word cloud, and the bigger the word showed more than the responses that showed more responses that we've had from the group. And as we can see here, it's interesting. If you look at the top, calm is basically one of the big hitters, along with happy, relaxed, and excited. That's great. Everybody's kind of in a really good mood to learn. And a lot of times when I do this with teams, other types of words come up, like overtired, overworked, and overwhelmed. And these kinds of things really lead toward a great retrospective, because that's when I would normally use this, because you get an idea of how people are feeling. And again, what's really also cool about this is we have no idea who actually submitted these results, so people can feel confident that what they put in here will not come back at them or anything. So again, this was just a way to get started. All right, so now let's get started with the meeting. All right, so that's pretty much introductions. And if you've been to these sessions before, I'm Bob. Pretty much, hopefully you know who I am. But hopefully soon we'll be able to see each other in person, face to face at the monthly chapter meetings. One thing, I recently changed jobs, and I now work at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And one thing, there's a whole ethics process that I have to go through. Like, I am not allowed to externally speak unless I say that anything that I share tonight is my personal view, and it does not reflect those of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York or the Federal Reserve Board. So Nitin?
Thanks, Bob. So unlike Bob, I don't have as many restrictions. I have a string of acronyms behind me as well: constant learner, former product owner, former scrum master, got into agile coaching a couple of years ago, worked with a multitude of teams, worked with teams that are hyper productive to teams that just hanged. On a personal note, I use Kanban to run my life. This is just a visualization of flow. And something about my psychological profile is in Strengths Finder. It's another way of getting to know each other, your team members as well. So Bob and I are both palindromes. You're going to get two different energies, two different stories, but hey, it's one philosophy. We believe this works.
All right, so tonight, unfortunately, John's not here, so he really can't share it, but John and I did a presentation for Rutgers graduate students for their iJobs programs. And pretty much John talked about, the challenges in the field of traditional project management. So we're actually going to be sharing some of the slides that John created. Then Nitin and I are going to actually go through a quick overview of Agile. We're going to touch on Lean, the principles, the values, and the frameworks. And then we're going to actually get into the whole reason why we're here. Like, where does a PM fit on an Agile team? And then we're going to throw out some ideas as far as what a PM could do next. And so on this challenges with traditional project management, we're not going to spend too much time, only because you guys are the experts. So it's like, it's just kind of like a refresher. Talks about the approach as far as being waterfall and having everything planned and executed up front, and having phases and phase gates. And basically the second thing is having all your requirements gathered up front, analyzed and really documented, and really spent a lot of time estimating. And we actually define exactly what's going to be delivered by the team. And basically a traditional project management would lead with command and control. And pretty much that puts the role of a project or a program manager, where basically a plan is set in place, and it's the job of the project or program manager to make sure that those plans are followed, and also to do all the necessary management reporting. And then as with any team, even agile teams, there's specialists. There's people that have particular skills that the team needs. And so that's really the bottom line. You need the skills on your team in order to deliver what's wanted by your customer. And then there's specialists, basically team members. Actually, I touched on that already. Sorry. Then actually the overall product, and that's actually what's being delivered to the customer, and that's done at the very end of the project. And some projects, that I've been doing this. I've been in project management for many years, and some projects could take a year, 2 years to be completed. So you don't really see what it comes out. And now basically, if you look at the value from the project, and here's something with a little bit of automation where you basically have phase 1, what the customer gets. And then as you can see, phase 2 through N, pretty much there's nothing. You don't really see much. The development team's working really hard. And then basically everything appears at the very end. And then there's this whole concept of VUCA. And pretty much there's volatility. And that means the world is changing really fast. We can't keep up. There's a lot of uncertainty, huge complexity, and a lot of ambiguity. And so these are the kinds of things that are being faced by project managers. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but this is the world that we're living in. And so the first thing is now we talked a little bit about the role of a project manager and what project managers have been doing across industries. And so now, what is Agile, Nitin?
So Agile is not a methodology. It's nothing prescriptive. It's not a way of developing software. There are a multitude of ways of doing it. And it is certainly a bit of a mindset. Here's what the example I use. You're watching something on TV and your friend calls, or Bob calls me, "Hey, Nitin, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm watching the sports channel." And he goes, "Well, what sport are you watching?" Are you watching soccer, basketball, something else? And I kind of relate this analogy to agility. Agility, in the spirit of sportsmanship, is a very broad concept in philosophy. And underneath that, you have a multitude of flavors. So what is Agile? If you click through, Bob's going to show, we're going to talk a little bit about lean thinking. Agility is a set of values and principles, and based on foundations where teams can make some decisions.
And so now we're going to kind of build Agile real quick. And I know this wasn't the topic of tonight, but Nitin and I felt that you really need to have a baseline as far as what Agile is. So we're going through this really quickly. We could spend a whole session on this. So basically, the first thing is lean. Okay, a lot of teams, when they talk about Agile, they forget the word lean, but lean and Agile go together. And so pretty much and this is what you would call a lean thinking house that was put together by Craig Larman. And if you want to see details about it, you could go to les.works. And pretty much you have a foundation and you have goals. And the foundation is basically what the whole idea behind a lean thinking manager. And basically it's a manager that actually helps the team and helps them grow their skills. That, again, that's really important for an Agile, for working with Agile and being lean. And then you have a goal, which basically I'm highlighting sustainable shortest lead time, high quality, high morale. And if you think about Agile, the whole point of Agile is to deliver working software frequently. So basically shortest lead time. And if we're talking about Scrum, that could be anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. So every 1 to 4 weeks, you'll actually see something that the customer can touch and feel and give you feedback. And it also leads with quality, because if you don't have high quality, you can't actually be Agile. And then there's 2 pillars. The first is respect for people. And again, nobody likes to waste their time. So basically no wasteful work. And then basically you want the teams to evolve their own practices and come up with their own improvements. And the other thing that with the people is you want to continually develop them. You want to give them opportunities to learn and grow their skills. And then we get into continuous improvement. And then, everybody's heard the word Kaizen, where basically you're doing small, relentless changes to improve yourself. There's this practice called the 5 whys, where basically if you ask why 5 times, you finally get to the answer. And again, here you want to limit your work in progress. And then in the middle, we have product development and we have the 14 principles. And the whole point of the product development is you want to basically create an environment where you're going to have great engineers on the long term. You want to basically provide them things that will make them want to stay with your company. And then again, if you think about the foundation, you get mentoring from a manager teacher. You also get mentoring from other team members. And then also you want to be creating knowledge. This is the whole idea behind a knowledge worker, where the team, as they're working, they create more and more knowledgeable, and they're actually to be able to solve problems quicker and faster. And then the principles, we're not going to go over all 14. There's stop and fix, there's simple visual management, where basically if you've ever used the Kanban board, that's a perfect example of that. And then basically it shows here where the tech leaders and the managers are actually teaching people, and that's how you get exceptional people. So if you're just looking at lean, you could see a high focus on people. And that's really what's really important here, because it's the people that are doing the work, and it's the people that are going to be delivering you value. So Nitin, what about the Agile Manifesto?
The Agile Manifesto, as we've heard before as well, came about in a ski resort when some developers got together. And we've seen this before, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. And this is where we also talk about shifting left, and where there are certainly values in things on the right. Hey, contract negotiation is important, following the plan is important, but the manifesto is simply saying that things on the left matter a little bit more, and we value that. And depending on your organization, your organization might be a little bit to the left or a little bit more to the right. And it is just what it is, coming with the culture, the history, and where they're going. But let's get something on our Mentimeter here and see if we can pull on something, Bob.
All right, so now what I'm showing on my screen is Mentimeter, and this is the one of the ones that we just did. So now I have to move to the next question. And so what I'm going to do is bring back the presentation, and I'm going to click, and you're going to get an option to actually use the QR code if you're not already in Mentimeter. Mentimeter will remember, but the problem is what I found is sometimes people's phones lock really quickly and they have to log back in. So again, it's the same Mentimeter that we were using before, the same codes, and this is the QR code to get to it. I'll leave that up for a couple seconds. And then I'd like to maybe time box this for about 2 minutes. And again, we have no idea who you are. And the whole question is, as a PM, all right, you're a PM now, and now you're actually working with Agile teams. Now, how, of these 4 values, what would you have the most difficulty embracing? Again, there's really no right or wrong answer. And so now I'm going to switch over to Mentimeter. And this is a way to show responses as dots. And it's also known as dot voting. So basically, if we were in a room together, you could say, okay, everybody, as you can see in Mentimeter, I gave everybody 2 dots. And basically you could put 2 on one, you could put 2 on another thing. And then this is a real great way to actually get quick feedback. And so far we've gotten 39 responses out of over 70 people. So hopefully some more people will be able to respond. And if you were not able to see the QR code, you can also go to menti.com and then just enter this number up here, 751-9419. All right, so I think we're getting some really good feedback, and it looks like respond to changeover following a plan. What do you think that means, Nitin? That PMs might find a problem embracing that.
I'm trying to remember, it was Eisenhower who may have said, planning is important, but maybe not the exact plan. And things change early. And how do we take to that in our day-to-day lives, be it work or otherwise? And how nimble can we be? Is there competition from someone outside? Is there a pandemic that's going on? Are there any government regulations that come about, be it here or overseas? So it's about adaptability in my mind. And
Anybody
in
in the,
traditional software development. Yeah, we can open it up as well. Let's ask the
Any-
crowd.
yeah, like, okay, you were just given this Agile manifesto, which is also known as values. What do you think as a PM, would be the most hard for you? Because I agree with everybody voting here, because when I first looked at Agile, I'm like, oh no, I'm a PM, I do plans. So what's this respond to change mean? So anybody else have any feedback?
You can even put it in the chat if you'd like.
Priorities change, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Customers change their mind sometimes, right? So they start here and they want something, but if you move forward, they may change their mind and want something else. So you need to adapt and be nimble, like you said.
Yep, that would be nice. That happens, right?
No. If we did the traditional project management and had everything done in the beginning, the customer hasn't seen or the user hasn't seen the product and they don't know what it can do. So you give them a sandbox or a POC and show them, oh, this is how it's going to look. But when they actually see the product with their data, then they say, oh, I need this too. And all the requirements change. And then you got to adapt to it and change it. And that's, I think the change comes after from the user, requirements change, regulations change. So basically, the only thing certain to change is change itself. So we have, I think, to use this change.
Yep, agreed.
Yep.
Isn't there that expression, change, or the only constant is a change?
Well, thanks everyone for sharing. Hopefully on the next one, we'll get more everybody talking. So let's go on to the next thing. So basically we just talked about the Agile Manifesto. And as Nitin said, this has actually been around for 20 years. It's pretty amazing. Okay, now what this really leads toward is, as a PM, it's a mindset change, okay? And basically I pulled this off the internet, and pretty much it says, a mindset is the established set of attitudes held by someone. All right, it's pretty much, it's what you're holding, what you're keeping in your mind. So basically, when you're working Agile, you have to allow yourself to do that shift in your mindset. And so now we have 12 principles. So Nitin, you want to take a pass at this?
Sure. So we won't go through each and every one of these, but some of these are very apt in software development teams and how people work. Number 7, for example, working software is the primary measure of progress, right? You might have all kinds of documentation in place, but if you don't have something in the hands of a customer or potential customer, how do you know whether you're succeeding or not? That leads to other things as well, right? There are things on architecture. So I'm going to pick number 11 randomly. The best architecture requirements and designs emerge, right? So they may not be planned for, or even if something was planned for, things shift. And the best way to get them from is the self-organizing teams. All right, and someone has to put themselves on mute. Number 2 is interesting because it gets into change as well. Welcoming changing requirements, even late in development. Agile processes harness change for the customer's competitive advantage. So I really like the anecdote and the story someone said earlier. You have to give something to the hands or into the hands of a customer, and then they can see it, feel it, touch it, throw darts at it, and say, hey, we did ask for X, Y, and Z, but we realize we also want A, B, and C or other things. So there's an opportunity to welcome that feedback. And if you're doing something like Scrum, take that feedback and put it into the product backlog and take it from there.
All right, so we're
that's
gonna
a little bit on the 12 principles.
thanks,
Back to you,
Nitin.
Bob.
All right, I'm gonna move to the next slide, next in the presentation. And then I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint. And again, this is Mentimeter, same Mentimeter, different question. If your phone locked, you can use the QR code, or you can enter the code. The person that's doing navigation, if you could put your phone on mute, that would be great. So I'm going to leave this up for a couple minutes. And
Use the right lane to take the 295 south ramp.
And so let's switch over to Mentimeter. All right, so now basically you're given 2 votes. And then the question would be, what do you think would be the
Use
most
the right lane
difficult
to take
for
the
a PM to
295
embrace?
So Bob, as the host, you can mute Scott.
Oh my goodness. Mute yourself, please.
Could be Christine. Let me check if I can mute Christine.
It's not me.
It's Scott you can
Oh,
mute.
Christine. Oh, Scott. Okay. Oh, I see
I
that.
just muted Scott.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Christine. I know it wasn't you. You were just talking. Time lag. Back to you, Bob.
Thanks.
And then I just made you a co-host too. Sorry about that.
No wonder. No worries.
All right.
I feel
So
powerful.
far we got 15 people that participated, and we're doing dot voting again. And you guys, I pretty much went the same way when I first looked at Agile. I'm like, welcome, changing requirements. What are you talking about? When we do waterfall, we lock things down. It's like we make it impossible for people to make changes. So that's interesting. So basically, we're going strong with that. We're at 33%, and I can't tell you how much I like Mentimeter. It's so easy to use. And I learned about it when I went to the Agile conference. They basically had back in August, people were using it. I was like, wow, this is really easy. And it's really cool. And you don't have to spend money either. And I am not getting a kickback from Mentimeter. All right, so we're sitting at 40 people. Anybody else want to just jump in here? But pretty much, what do you guys see? Anybody want to share in the audience?
As a project manager, the sustainable development is difficult because that implies the project never ends.
Yep, that's an interesting one. And some would go a little bit more philosophical to supplement what you said, saying, are we getting into projects or products with this whole agility thing? And with products, do they ever end or do they evolve?
I would think that, I have also chosen the one that said the most effective method of conveying information is face-to-face communication. I think that's a little old school today. Face-to-face is always a plus, getting in a room together face-to-face, reading the room, right? But I think today, for a lot of reasons, it doesn't necessarily always have to be face-to-face to be effective and successful, right? In my opinion.
Yeah, sure. The world has changed, particularly so with the pandemic. A lot of people are remote right now, but work is still happening. Right? There's nothing like face-to-face. I guess when people are authoring the manifesto, that's only a plus. I think I get better results talking to my significant other face-to-face rather than sending her a text. But that's just my personal life.
It also,
but it is interesting, yeah.
You have to think about.
Yeah, this is Amit Ray. I didn't get to scan your code, but some of these statements, kind of obviously one-line statements can be simplistic, right? So there may be more behind this. For example, business people and developers must work together throughout the project. In reality, that's very difficult to achieve. If you're a PM, you want the business people involved. Yes, they will, but at what frequency, what intervals? So you got to manage that. So it's simplistic to think that they're going to be working all the time together. So operationalizing such a statement is not so easy. So you got to put right checkpoints in order to achieve what you really want to get done here, which is the product gets developed according to the customer needs and the needs of the business.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. One of the things I work in a bank and we're kind of a hybrid environment, neither agile nor, the waterfall. But because of all the regulations and all, the delivering working software frequently is a challenge because of all the CRQ, the paperwork. We have to get a approval from a change control board to deploy software to production. It's a pretty involved process. So, I mean, ideally, you want to be able to deploy it. I had in another job in Nomura, there was a person in London was deploying every week to production, but we can't really do that. And that's one of the biggest challenges we face if we were, doing an agile involving delivering working software frequently.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. That is a challenge. And what I'm thinking of is if you could picture a seesaw going left or right, working software over comprehensive documentation, right? That was one of the things. And the organization you're in, they need that comprehensive documentation just to be compliant and to deal with regulations and so on. So to be able to tilt or shift that can be difficult.
All right, so again, everyone, thank you for participating in that survey. And there's going to be one more. And Nitin and I are going to use that actually for feedback at the end. And we're going to show you, how to do that. And so let's go to the next slide. And so again, shifting mindset. And what we really want to bring focus to here is if your mindset is command and control, basically you like tools and processes and practices. Now, if you start shifting your mindset, basically you have to have principles and values. And pretty much that's what we just shared with you is the Agile principles and the Agile values. And then with those, you have the practices. So again, just to kind of take a step back and look at things a little bit differently as far as, changing your mindset a little bit. All right, so Nitin, you want to take this one? What does it mean to be lean agile?
Yep, sure. Some of you may have seen this before from an earlier presentation, but we use this metaphor of a tree. So right at the roots, you have your values. And, the soil nurtures this. And this has lean values and principles. And above the roots, you've got your principles. This is where you're starting to get a bit into the trunks. And we saw the 4 values through the manifesto. And we use that in the decision making and use that as a guide for stakeholders. And we embrace and work for the 12 Agile principles. And then you have the frameworks above. The frameworks could be Scrum, could be Kanban, and up high, something more visible when the branches come out, the leaves, you get into practices. So you might have your daily Scrum or a stand-up, you might have a review or retrospective, you might borrow from extreme programming and have 2 people eyeballing something. A lot of people are looking at the practices way up top and they forget a few things underneath that. And it could just be cultural based on your organization. But in order to embrace agility and get a lot more out of it, we have to look at a greater picture here. So that's the metaphor on the lean agile with the practices, frameworks, principles, and the values.
Hey, sorry, Nitin, can you go back to that slide, please?
Sure, Bob, let's go back for a quick minute.
Just, sorry.
No problem.
Sorry, the tree right there, the tree. So, just a question. No, I need the. Oh.
We'll get it up for you.
Well, Agile principles, and then there are 14 principles underneath. So is that different? The Agile principles versus the lean values and principles, are they different, or are they the same, or what's the difference between the two?
So lean is, the values and principles are a little different. You can look them up. I wouldn't get into too much detail.
Okay.
So like the 3 variances, lean, and amongst other things. But what's very common is the manifesto, because of the coming together of the collective wisdom and intellect of people in 2001. So that got very popular over the years. So there is certainly something underneath that, and there was something that was even prevalent underneath, or you could say it simultaneously or in parallel. There's certainly other things there as well.
Okay, thanks, Nitin.
And
Thank you.
And they are different, but they're very similar. And lean was, came out way before the Agile Manifesto in 2001. So it's you could say they're complementary.
Yeah, I'll give you another quick example. In the roots, we saw respect for people. One of the core values in Scrum, which is just a practice and a framework under the Agile umbrella, is respect. There's courage, openness, respect. But hey, respect for people. We get it from elsewhere as well. So they're very intermingled. And so this is a nice segue as well, with some metrics and information from the industry. This is the 15th State of Agile report, 15 years in the running. And it seems we talk a lot about Scrum because it remains to be a very popular practice. But then besides Scrum, there are a few other things as well. You have Scrum Bond that's coming about, Scrum XP Hybrid, Kanban, and other things. So if you remember the top of the tree, the branches and the practices, that's what they are. And underneath that, you have a few of the things that happen, like your daily Scrum or retrospective or things.
And
So let's move on, Bob.
And the next slides basically, we picked the most popular framework. So the examples we're giving as far as how a PM can fit in, this would apply to Scrum. All right, so if you look at the roles that are on a Scrum team, basically you have the product owner, the Scrum Master, and pretty much development, the people doing the work. And so these are, that's it. So now as a PM, you think, okay, I'm a project manager. What's my role? Well, there is no role of a project manager on a Scrum team. And so that's the main question that keeps on coming up, especially as a PM, because you have a wealth of experience. You know how to get stuff done. You know how to do things. But now, how do you take those skills and put them into these different roles? Was that a question or?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Did you put the question on the chat, or are you having audio issues?
Well,
why don't you keep going, Bob?
Sure. And so basically what we did is we took the 3 roles. That's the roles that are recognized by Scrum, development.
So what did you think of the other issue, the conversational flow? Oh, okay.
Someone's got to put themselves on mute. I'll check.
Yeah, this is has to do with, yes. So
you need to put
Okay.
a minute on. Yep, there you go.
I think I did that. Thank you.
Okay.
All right,
so
back to
now,
you, Bob.
Sure. And sorry about that, but Nitin and I made a conscious decision to keep the line open because we want you guys to participate. If we put everybody in a mode where they can't talk, it kind of defeats the purpose of a discussion group. So sometimes we have these things and we have to just deal with it as quickly as we can. But anyway, getting back to this, Scrum, if you follow Scrum, and again, we could spend a whole presentation on Scrum, but we're not. We're just saying in Scrum, there's 3 roles. All right. So now Most companies are using Scrum. That's given because based on the previous chart, some people use what they call Scrum Hybrid, but still it's Scrum. There's only development, a product owner, and a Scrum Master. Now, how does a PM fit in with this? So where is the project manager? Or, maybe I should have put, where's Waldo? But anyway, take a look at it. This is that chart in a little bit of a different manner. All right. So basically we have a Scrum team and they're kind of sitting in the middle. And basically we have the development manager. That's usually who these people report to. We have functional managers that are kind of sitting on the outside. And these are the ones that are saying, I want this, I want that. Okay. And then basically you have the three roles. You have the development, people that do development work, people that is the product owner, and the person that's the Scrum Master. These are individual roles. And now normally outside of the circle, the product owner sometimes delegates it to the Scrum Master to kind of keep the PMI updated. Usually you have like a PMO office or something like that. So basically the PM's there and they're getting input to keep everybody else happy in the organization as far as monitoring the process, monitoring and giving guidance and support. And then feeding into this, you have business users and BAs, or sometimes they're system analysts, whatever the organization wants to call them. They're the ones that are actually feeding requirements into the process. So here we have this picture of, what Scrum is, how it works, and where the PM fits in. All right. So now what happens if we rename the PMO to Center of Excellence? Pretty much when it's a Center of Excellence, the PMO role goes away. And then basically, then the product owner and the Scrum Master now must do this reporting and keeping the business up to date as far as what's going on. Because again, even if you're following Scrum, the business is spending millions of dollars, so they want to know what they're getting for their money. And so that's pretty much the picture. That's pretty much the landscape. That's pretty much where we are right now. So here we have PMs in the organization, and what do they do? What can they do? So you look at typical PM skills. This is in the world before Scrum. It's even in the world right now, where basically you manage the iron triangle, scope, time, and cost. You do quality management, you do task assignments, you do communications, you do cross-team collaboration, you do status, you do conflict management. And I probably should have put another box on here that said ... because there's so many more things that a PM does. So, this is pretty much what PMs do. So now when you have a Scrum team, these responsibilities or these skills are needed in different roles. So what ends up happening is that skill, to managing, helping with the scope, moves from the project manager to the product owner. Time moves to the whole team. Now the whole team's responsible for setting schedules. Cost moves to the product owner. Quality management goes to the whole team. Task assignment goes to the actual people doing the work. Communications goes to the product owner. Status goes to the Scrum Master. Development goes to cross-team collaboration, status, and conflict management. So as you can see here, everything changes when we have Scrum. Is there any questions?
I think I've got a quick comment here, Bob, and we'll open it up. So the functions of a project manager don't really disappear. They're starting to get sprinkled across the team with these new roles in the industry. And there could be more in the ... dots. We just have to figure what are the best fits with the team.
Hey, Bob and Nitin, question.
Yep.
I know one of the things that with the soft skills and things they talk about with project management, one of the big things is stakeholder management. And I know a product owner owns the product and what's going on, but the challenge, of course, is the stakeholders can't attack the Scrum. Sort of, I'm going to refer to it as the Scrum, ball or whatever you want to call it. But the challenge is how does a product owner manage stakeholder management? Because typically it's not something the person may have the skill at.
And go ahead.
That's interesting.
Go ahead.
So that's about the skill set and whether they need to sharpen it, hone it, have that tact, have that negotiation, have that charm. Unfortunately, and Ken Schwaber says this as well, one of the signatories and one of the co-developers of Scrum, he said, if there is one single wringable neck on a Scrum team, that belongs to the product owner. And the product owner does represent, or is intended to represent, that voice of the customer and manage the stakeholders. Even downstream, when they're doing the reviews or giving demos, they invite the key stakeholders in. So we know, unfortunately, that burden falls on the product owner, but skill set, yeah, that's another one.
Well, that's
What
the one
would-
I think that's the biggest challenge, I think, because very often then those product owners are reaching into the Scrum, trying to be able to adjust the direction that the product owner is pushing. So that's where it becomes a real challenge, I think.
Yeah, agree. And if I could expand upon this a little bit, right? This is a very simple graph with just one team. But what happens when you have an organization that wants to do more of this for whatever reason, right? They've heard the benefits, they read articles, a conference. There's actually a term called the fake product owner in less. And they're like, wait, why would you call someone a fake product owner? Because perhaps, as you're suggesting, the person designated with that hat or title may not be the true product owner, again, alluding to the skill sets and so on. But it is key, and I really appreciate that feedback and what you're bringing forward with the stakeholder management.
And actually, the product owner becomes the protector of the team because the stakeholders are not allowed to go to the team if they want something. They have to work through the product owner, and then the Scrum Master is there to help protect the team. The Scrum Master protects the team's autonomy by making sure that they're allowed to work on what they committed to, and what you're getting here is what happens when Agile works. And again, this is a very simple explanation, but what we're trying to show you is you have phenomenal skills. It's just that you're just not going to call yourself a product owner anymore. I mean a project manager anymore. Maybe you're a product owner. Maybe you're a Scrum Master, or maybe you grew up through coding. Maybe you like to code. So maybe you want to be a developer. And so that's really what this is. And so what we want to do is just give you a real quick high level view of what the product owner does and what the Scrum Master does and what development does. So Nitin, you want to cover product owner? Nitin?
Oh, I was on mute, sorry. Yeah, I'll cover this and a few good questions and comments coming from the chat as well. We'll get to that. I do like the product owner role coming in from a BA background. Hey, this is key stakeholder management or interaction. This is someone who has the vision, someone who's trusted in the organization, someone who's empowered to make decisions as well. And someone who can give time to not only the stakeholders, but to the worker bees, such as the dev team members. Unfortunately, in the industry, people still think, hey, if I'm a PM, I can easily move to the Scrum Master role. But maybe you're better off being a product owner if you enjoy certain skill sets and you have this in mind.
And then the next one is the Scrum Master. And again, like what Nitin just said, it's a typical transition path for a PM. They become they become a Scrum Master. And here again, talking about mindset, there's a major shift you're gonna have to make. You as a PM, you're used to command and control. When you become a Scrum Master, you have to totally let that go, because as a Scrum Master, you don't tell anybody what to do. You enable the team to what we call self-organize and actually assign themselves to tasks and make their own commitments. And then there's these two things that go with leadership with a Scrum Master, servant and catalyst, where when you're a servant leader, you're basically enabling the team to really do well. But when I work with a team, my goal is to actually make it so the team doesn't need me. And that way I know that I did my job really well. And then that opens me up to become a Scrum Master for another team. It's not all about job security. And then the catalyst leadership is really cool, because when the team is struggling, following processes and stuff like that, you have a chance to take a look at what the team's doing and say, hey, why are we doing that? Why can't we do this instead? And actually working with the organization to get those changes in place in order for the team to actually be more efficient. And then the last role is development. You want to take a pass at that, Nitin?
Sure. So dev team members don't necessarily mean the actual people doing the code. It's anybody working towards the increment. These could be people with testing skills, QA, BAs, and the whole idea is to have an empowered cross-functional team, meaning together they can work as a unit of one. And the Scrum Master helps nurture and try to get that environment in place. And there are lesser dependencies outside, and they move ahead to get the product to life.
Okay, now we just described how a PM could actually fit, how your skills can fit into the Scrum team roles. And so now the remainder of the presentation, we're going to talk about, what you could do if you haven't actually started to do this already. So pretty much, there's no straight answer to like, okay, if you were to ask me, come to me and say, hey, Bob, or hey, Nitin, what certifications did I get? It really depends on your circumstance. Like, do you want to be a Scrum Master? Do you want to be a product owner? Do you want to be a coach? So here's just some ideas. First thing you have to do to even, get recognized, like if you want to put something on your resume that will get you interviews, is you need to be a CSM, which is a Certified Scrum Master, a PSM, a Professional Scrum Master, or a Discipline Agile Scrum Master, a DASM. So those would be the 3 credentials that you'd want to go for as a starting point. And then from there, you can actually, build on your skills. And so then the next, Nitin, you want to talk about this?
Which one is it? So the PMI, ACP, or the DSSM? Yeah, so if you are in an environment that has experienced agility, you've got a few years, the ACP is a little bit more broader. It encompasses several flavors of agility. They want to check your hours. They want you to have at least 21 contact hours. So all of that is needed, and your application could even be audited. The CSM or PSM are more of stepping stones, and you don't need any formal training, anything prior. So that would be just the starting point.
And then you can move, then other ideas might be, if I wouldn't go for SAFE certification unless your organization's using it, but there's this SAFE Agilist certification, LESS, that Craig Larman lean slide that I shared, CLP is Certified LESS Practitioner, and there's others, there's Nexus, there's Scrum at Scale. So there's a lot of different things, but if you don't have your CSM or PSM or DASM, you would start there first. And then finally, if you wanted to move into coaching, you could go for your Agile Certified Coach. That would be the IC Agile Professional in coaching. And so these are just some ideas, and it really it's really individual. There's no one size fits all. And Nitin and I are available if you ever want to bounce ideas off of us. We're here, and we'd be willing to share that. So is there any questions about that?
What is a plank owner? I mean, there was one of the call out on, I think, when Bob, you and Nitin introduced yourself on that slide, there was next to Nexus. And
well, that's me.
what kind of certification is that? Plank owner.
So it's not a certification. So when the Nexus was introduced through scrum.org, somewhere around December 2014, it was a class of about 15 people, and I was one of them. And we were designated as plank owners, and Ken Schwaber co-presented that. So that time there wasn't even a certification for it. So meaning I'm one of the earlier adopters when it comes to scaling in the philosophy of scrum.org. So that's what that means. Nexus has evolved, and there is an updated Nexus guide as well on scrum.org site.
Cool. Thanks, Nitin, for sharing.
And then we wanted to put this in since, we're our PMI chapter. And so this whole Discipline Agile, like, what is it? It's something like PMI bought Discipline Agile. They also bought Flex, which helps with product ownership and do value stream mapping. But tonight we're talking about the DASM. So basically there's a path where you can basically, you're new to Agile, you can go for your DASM. Now, if somebody's experienced with Agile, they can go for their DASSM, which is a Discipline Agile Scrum Master. There's 2 levels of this. One would be a SM for a beginning Scrum Master or SSM for a senior Scrum Master. And then you also have the, you could actually get your PMIACP. And basically that would basically show you general knowledge. And then basically, then from there, you could go to the DASSM role. But that's pretty much how the Discipline Agile is coming together right now. John Zay is actually our chapter contact with PMI. He's actually working to bring a Discipline Agile course to the chapter. And so just, watch for announcements on that. And then basically, you want to basically, you could also do a value stream consulting, and that's basically leveraging the Flex, which is which was a tool that was used for that. And that's what this is showing. And this is something a product owner would probably want to do. It wouldn't hurt if you're a Scrum Master. And then you could also become ultimately a coach as well. So as you can see, PMI has come up with, multiple certifications in this space. Any questions? All right, so now we have 9 minutes left. This is a way to get feedback. If we were sitting together in the same room, Nitin and I would say, well, raise your fingers and tell us how you feel. And pretty much if you didn't feel like you were having a good time or learning anything, you would put no fingers up. If you thought it was fantastic, you would put 5. And then the whole idea is to put a number of fingers from 1 to 5 in between. And you can do this remotely. Like this is an example, like if we were doing a in-room, in-house fist of 5, everybody puts up 5 fingers that's saying, hey, this is totally fantastic. So now let me switch over to Mentimeter and set up the last survey. And so now we're showing the QR code that you can use, or the Mentimeter. You could actually go to menti.com and enter this code. So I'm gonna leave that up for a minute. And so you can think about it. Did Nitin and I put you to sleep? That would be a 0. Did you enjoy it? That would be a 3. If you thought it was fantastic, you would put a 5. And when you do this with an in-room thing, don't get too precise, because sometimes a PM likes to do that. They'd like to say, well, we have 3 5s and 2 4s and 1 1, and what's the average? What you do is you just scan the room, and if you see a lot of 5s and 3s, maybe it's a 4. You can say, okay, it looks like we're averaging 4. It doesn't have to be very scientific. It just gives you a real quick way of getting feedback. So let's swing over to Mentimeter and see what people think.
And again, these are anonymous. We don't know who's doing what.
And so far we got 50 people giving feedback. And so John is going to be sending a survey, and we are looking for feedback. So if there's any things we could do or change to make this better, please tell us. And because that's what being Agile is all about. The whole it's that coined phrase, inspect and adapt. You inspect what you did, and then you adapt.
It's almost like that earlier example, right? Until you get the product in the hands of a customer, they won't know what it does or how it felt, right? So you all read a description, you signed up, and now you've gone through this, and it will be open for feedback. We do have some time as well. We'll open it up to questions, and it could even be through the chat, and we'll stop recording at 7, and Bob, I will stay on a little later as well.
And so that concludes our presentation. And when you get the survey, you're going to get a code for the PDU to get PDUs from PMI. It's a registered course, or you can just use the code that's showing up on your screen. So I'll just leave this up and we can take questions if there's any.
So I have a question. So I like the slide that you showed, like what PM skills are and then like how they can go and become a product owner or a scrum master. But how do we translate that into our resumes? You know, like how do we put so that it kind of pops more, like we're someone who doesn't officially have scrum master experience or product owner experience. Like how could we convey that we know that we could do it and we want to do it and have the person on the other end say, yeah, I think this person could do it.
That's a great question. I only have tips or suggestions. Because these roles, I would still say, are considered newer in the industry, particularly the product owner. There are still a few misconceptions around what a Scrum Master does. So imagine, people barely know about product owners. I would just list out, I mean, if you see a job description, they're looking for product owner, I would just have a blurb somewhere up top in skill sets or potential product owner skill sets and just call that out. Let someone reading understand or comprehend, hey, this person may not be a product owner or may not have had that title, but they're familiar with it. They're aware of it. They've kept in touch in the industry to see what it is. And okay, they've done A, B, or C. And hopefully that just gets put in the door where you can have that conversation. Again, just my thought process and feedback.
And it also wouldn't hurt if you got your certified Scrum product owner certification. It's only a 2-day class. It would actually then, it would be a keyword that would get triggered by the machine, resume screening. The same goes with the CSM. And then in your experience, you could highlight the things that the product owner does that you've been doing. Because you really can't say that you've been a product owner, but you can say the kinds of things that a product owner does. You would, what I would do is look up the product owner role in Scrum and then align everything that you're doing to that. And then anybody that's familiar with the product owner, they would see, hey, this person does these kinds of things.
Hey, so Bob, Nitin, and what's the weightage given to certifications? I mean, I'm a PM, and in the PMO, I mean, if they're like, I'd say about 20 PMs in my PMO, I'd say about 3 or 4 PMPs. We have 3 Scrum Masters. Only one of them is CSM certified. We have 2 people pulled from somewhere who are not certified, but they got this role and they're doing a decent job of it. So what's the importance of certification when you go for a job? At least in the New York metro area, I think certifications are, it depends, I would say, but I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
If you're internal in the company already, you could easily, it's a lot easier to bridge, into that role. But if you're from the outside, at least when I was looking for a job before I joined the Federal Reserve, I saw a lot of job requirements saying you need to be a CSM, or, they required that as far as being able to get the interview. So it really depends on the job that you're trying to get.
Yeah. Nitin,
go ahead, Nitin.
I think you may have answered your own questions when I would have, it depends, right? The organization that I'm a part of, they were certainly looking for certain credentials. If you did not have them, then I wouldn't even have a phone conversation. So that was just a requirement for that organization and where they were. Some companies, they don't care, right? But certifications also offer just a challenge to yourself personally and what you get out of it. So it's really up to the organization. If you are in the market and you're looking, some recruiters, if you're looking for contractual work, they might use that as a yardstick to move things ahead. And sometimes that's unfortunate. I worked with a wonderful Scrum Master around 2010 or so, and she wasn't certified, but I learned so much from her. She had great skills, even soft skills, and she really knew how to bring people together and move people along. And she wasn't certified. There wasn't an expectation there as well. But certainly, if you are in the market or are thinking, then we've even done a few presentations on the alphabet soup that's out there. And I'd seriously look into getting a few things under your belt if you can. But again,
Yeah, I've got 2 of them. So can add a few more if they had some, ROI.
yeah. And personally, just for me, sometimes when I interview candidates, I get a sense of the journey where they've been, and it embraces common lingo and a common set of words, and we all are speaking the same language. It might be a little easier downstream to work with such a potential candidate who has that certification. But again, a lot of these things are subjective.
Yep, that's true. As I said, it depends. I think I answered your question.
Yeah.
I worked with a totally brilliant developer, and he was anti-certification. So it really just goes like what Nitin you're saying. It really definitely does depend. But sometimes if you're trying to apply for a job where it says you're required to have a CSM, I don't know if they would even contact you. But again, I'm not the recruiter, so it's really up to you.
Yep.
Time check, Bob. Let's stop.
We hit the time, so I'm going to stop the recording.